So, podcast 4, where and when to fish for bass. Well, the season, as I recall, starts around about mid-April, May, June, good times, end of August, September, October, in most parts of sort of like East Anglia, the south coast. Now round towards where the water's a bit warmer, say like Cornwall, round there, maybe even Devon as well, that can extend, and they're talking about bass in November and December. So I'm talking about good size ones. So yeah, that's pretty much the gist of it, really. And I don't know. I know you can go online and you can talk about where the bass go and all this, that, and the other, and they generally sort of go offshore a bit. And I know the sort of commercial boats sort of have a quota and they sort of go after them. But as for shore fishing, that's primarily the times. Things get good around about getting on towards the end of April. There used to be cod fishing in like the third week of April, and if you were using like lug and peeler and stuff like that, you could usually sort of pick off quite a good bass as well. And that was, for me, that was like, they're here. You know what I'm saying? Now the cod aren't really here anymore, and now it's just all bass, but they're still great fish. So yeah, a lot of my bait fishing this part of the coast is done mainly around in sort of May, early June, and I start to go on the lures around about the end of August, September, and maybe in the first week of October, around this part of the coast. And my lure fishing's only for about 6 weeks at the most when I'm actually doing it. There's a lot of tide off here. There's always a good chance of running into a good bass. I have had them on lures in May, but the amount of times I went to look to see if it was clear enough was quite a lot, and then one time it came clear. The weather conditions just had one tide, a high water tide, and it came clear, and I got one. I got one nearly £6 on a Savage Gear Seeker lure. And the fish must have only been about 5 metres off the shingle. So this it's quite hard to get the sort of conditions right. I know Cornwall and that, and fishing sort of the winter months for them and stuff. Bit different around Guernsey, places like that, Guernsey, Alderney, Jersey, where they're a bit like Cornwall. They sort of, they get the fish early. The water's virtually always clear there. And the fish are there first and they're there last. You know what I'm saying? So very sort of. It's North Wales. I've sort of not really done much in sort of North Wales, Bristol Channel. It's going to be all bait fishing, I assume. But that's pretty much the the times of when you can sort of get them. I'm just trying to think what else I can sort of say about it, really. Night time going for them, it doesn't really matter. For me, there's always a bit of mystery about going at night time fishing for a bass. One thing I'd say, when you're out there and you're fishing, you might just want to fish for too big a tide, especially sort of in sort of May sort of time. You can get a lot of weed. If there's been a bit of a storm, you might find you've got a bait fish and then you can sort of run into a lot of weed and stuff like that. One thing I have I've learned just recently is I've not tried it, but when the weed is on and that's clogging up your line, your bait is usually sort of entangled in it all and it's not fishing properly. Do you know what I'm saying? And it coincides with like, I might as well pack up and go on. Some match anglers, they've developed a technique where they'll tie on like 1.5 metre, 2 metre length of snood tight to the lead, even fixed onto the lead. Now, when you cast, sometimes they say it does tangle, but most of the time it doesn't. And so basically, your line in the seabed, that's just like anchored as a clothesline almost, and the weed comes along and just catches on. But your trace and your bait is not on attached to it, so you're still fishing. So there might still be some fish there. So might still be a fish. Another tactic: if there is a lot of tide and a lot of weed, just drop it short. Drop it 15, 20 yards. Just try that. But for me, it doesn't really matter when the sea's sort of churned up and big breakers, and the sea is a bit mucky and you're fishing baits. I mean, that's perfect sort of conditions. It doesn't really matter whether you're fishing at night or during the day. If there's some colour in the sea, it doesn't really matter too much. Just trying to think what else we can sort of discuss really. Yeah, like I say, sort of when the water clarity goes a bit clearer, just sort of look for sort of, you haven't necessarily, you can just find your own spots to fish really. Just go for sort of a walk along the beach and just sort of identify. You can be able to see if you've got some Polaroid sunglasses on. You should be able to identify the kelpy areas, the darker areas, the ledges where the bass tuck in and sit from the current, waiting for the smaller bait fish to go over the top. I mean, bass will eat pretty much anything really. Gobies, blennies, wrasse, small ballan wrasse, obviously your sand eels, your usual sort of things. They'll eat crabs, they'll eat absolutely anything. So, you know, it's just finding some ground where they're sort of feeding. But sometimes you'll go to a patch of ground that's flat calm and you'll fish and there's just nothing there when they should be there, even on a good tide. And you look at the conditions, it might be like bright sunshine, the tide's eased off and it's slack water or something like that. But if you went there in different conditions, like half a metre surf, something like that, doing the same technique, they seem to come from offshore knowing that there's going to be some food there, you see. They're obviously looking for food elsewhere, further out to sea. So yeah, so I mean that's pretty much where and when to fish. Yeah. I mean, I used to keep a logbook of all my trips, what I caught, when, water temperature, wind direction, swell height, wave height, bait I was using, what I caught, what size hooks. When I first started out, I used to sort of do all that sort of stuff. I got the water temperature and everything. And I found that sort of, and I'd done that for about 30 fish or something like that, so I got bored of it. But it was sort of a blueprint, a sort of step-by-step process. Because obviously I was really keen, and I was sort of, you know, going through it. And I would say that's a good way if you're new to it and you're trying to identify what's working and what ain't. Really sort of, you know, go to that sort of logging things in detail. Really noting the weather, keep note of successes and failures and things like that. So I would say wherever you're living around the British Isles, and it's known for sort of a few bass, fish your own patch. Master your own patch. Get to know where the closest one to you. And say, right, this is it. We're going to keep fishing my local patch, my favourite beach, until I'm going to run into this good bass. It's as simple as that. They will be there. You've just got to try and identify the best times to intercept them, really. So, like I said, get intimate knowledge of your own patch of ground before you hop in the car and drive for 4 hours to experiment on some other sort of area. Because you're better off sort of failing close to home than to be a long way, a lot of fuel, and sort of buggering it up there, so to speak. And also, one thing I would say before you go, get hold of the latest webcams of the nearest pier or whatever, wherever you're fishing, and that's going to paint a picture for what it's looking like, what the sea colour's like, size of the surf and all sorts. Swell map is a good one, windy is a good one to go on, tides for fishing is a good one to get you information. again, the new moon, the bigger tides in the range, all factors like that. So there's a lot to sort of, you know. So yeah, I mean the water is quite cold, sort of April time. Depends how early you start. If you start sort of mid-April, that can be really quite bitterly cold. I think you need about 8 degrees, something like that. I think I've had my best bass on about 12, 14 degrees, something like that. But I think it varies year to year. Like you say, you want sort of fresh baits. If you can get hold of some peeler crab, if you can't get hold of any, order some. That's a brilliant bait. That really is. I find they last for about 7 days. On day 7, they're a little bit manky, but you still fish with them. But if you keep them in a cold fridge, in the packaging they came in, you can usually get them, and not even without adding any water, they usually just about stay alive for 7 days. So that's a lot of fishing and a lot of different, do you know what I'm saying? So you can take, if you go with 50, take 10 out at a time, go with one rod, fish a tide, no luck, or had a few fish, try somewhere else with another 10 on another tide, go at night time with 10, try somewhere slightly different, maybe somewhere a bit deeper, somewhere a bit more remote and exposed, something a bit sort of extreme. So there's lots of different options. Right, so that's podcast 4, where and when to fish, and I hope that helped and sort of outlined it a little bit for you. If you've got any other questions or if you think I've missed something off, drop us a line. All right, I'll see you later. Thanks, guys.